All right, everybody. Hey, welcome to the first night in the book of Numbers. And Numbers is I think, a woefully underrated book in the Pentateuch. Walking through Leviticus, yes, we hit a lot of laws, a lot of purification, a lot of ritual, a lot of things that felt uh, at times like, are we still doing this? And even in those moments where it feels like going through the are we still doing thisness of it um, all of that stuff is important to help remember that the people of Israel are learning how to host the presence of the Lord in their camp. And so ritual, purity, all of those things are very important if they're going to host the holiness of the Lord and his glory with them on earth. So all of that's really valuable information and understanding how seriously the glory we should take the glory of God. Numbers then is a book that moves out of Sinai and starts making their way to the land, the promised land. But there is a diversion in their rebellion. So there's a lot more action happening in the book of Numbers, interspersed with laws that are given as the people continue to grow and develop into the nation of Israel. And so I think people see the title like of Numbers and they think, oh, it's just a bunch of counts and genealogies, and that is there are censuses in the book of Numbers, but it's poorly named, and the book is named Numbers because of the Greek and the Latin traditions. Arithmoi in Greek is where we get arithmetic from, and so like it was just called arithmoi because there are numbers involved in the Greek translation, the Septuagint, and then the Latin Vulgate carried that over, and so now in our English translations we have numbers. In the Hebrew translation, the titles of the books are often their first words in the book. And so the first words of the book of Numbers are the Lord spoke to Moses in the tent of meeting in the desert of Sinai on the on the first day of the second month of the second year after the Israelites came out of Egypt. And so the real word here is the Lord spoke, or in the wilderness. And that's what this book really is about: God speaking to his people and the wilderness wandering. And so I have an overview that I will share with you. This is from Bible Blueprints. I did not make this, I acquired it from this resource. And I want to zoom out a little bit so we can see the whole screen. Oh, too far. All right. So as you can see on this, it's the fourth book in the Old Testament, 36 chapters total. We have the period here of 1450 to 1400 BC. Moses is the author. These are all things that are fairly traditional understandings of the book. So nothing like earth-shattering here, but we have this breakdown of the book into 6 sections in this breakdown. And there's different people who break it down into like 4 or 5 sections. But this is a pretty good breakdown because we see Israel preparing to leave Sinai, verses 1 through 10, or chapters 1 through 10, and they go to Kadesh, which is the southern border of the land, the promised land, in 10 and 12. And then the rebellion, which is they send the spies in, and the spies come out and they say, most of them are like, it's overwhelming, there's no way we could do this. But Joshua and Caleb are like, yes, we can. And so this rebellion at Kadesh keeps them from going directly into the land. And so they end up doing the wandering in the wilderness for 40 years. And we'll talk about the implications of that when we get to there. And then in the journey from Kadesh to Moab is the long journey they take around the peninsula. And I have a map that I'll show in just a second. And then in Moab, that's when they encounter King Balak and Balaam the donkey, and Balaam and the donkey, and different prophetic events happen there from Balaam. And so it's a very interesting encounter in that section, dealing with foreign kings and over like eventually their victory over Moab. And then 33 through 36 is kind of the summary of the the journey through the wilderness, and then Deuteronomy is going to be the final words before they enter into the land. And so we are almost through the Pentateuch, guys. We should finish the Pentateuch this year, which is exciting. So let me show you the map of where we're going to be in this journey. Where did my notes go? Oh, I closed my notes. Why did I do that? So let me share this with you. Zoom out again. Zoom out. Zoom out. Technology is killing me. All right. So stop share, and then I'm going to share this. I do like the Zoom ability to share things. It does help make things a little easier. So this is the map here, and if you can see the dotted lines, it's very faint in this scan of this copy, but the traditional version journey that they take is down from Ramses, and then down somewhere along here they cross a body of water. So the Red Sea's here, and so they could have gone all the way down across here, or the water could have come a little bit higher up and they cross over there. And they go down to the bottom of the Sinai Peninsula, and then here at Kadesh Barnea, that's where the rebellion happens. And so Mount Sinai is somewhere in this area traditionally. But the rebellion and not lack of trust of the Lord kicks them back down into the wilderness for a good long while. And then the Lord directs their steps back up to go across the Jordan River instead of coming in through the south route, which is the most direct route. But before they go into the land of the promise, they cross the Jordan River and then to Jericho and on to the conquest. So we're going to, like, in the next few weeks, get up to Kadesh Barnea and then experience their rebellion with them, and then they will get into the wilderness wandering. So all of this is just kind of giving a little bit of context for what the book is really going to be about. And so while we see these different challenges throughout it all, we're going to see the character of God on display, in that he is pure. He is pure holiness. He is stern, and he demands the people trust him and obey him in all things. But also, he is gracious, and even though they rebel against him, he does continue to welcome them back and to bring them into the land eventually. Even though a generation is going to die in the wilderness because of their rebellion. And so some of the themes in the book of Numbers are holiness, order. We're going to look at the outcomes from disobedience. We're going to talk about land, and we're going to talk about history. And so those are some of the major themes. And as followers of Jesus, when we think about our reading of the Old Testament, one of the things that we should relate to is the idea of living in a kind of exile, because this world is not our home. This world is not what God has for us ultimately. And so we are on a journey in a kind of wilderness as we await for the Lord's return. And so when we read passages from Numbers in the wilderness and we see their rebellion, we should learn about how does that affect us in our current situation. So while we don't doubt the Lord and then have a bunch of serpents come into the camp, like, that's not something we generally worry about, but we do doubt the Lord. And so the cure for the serpents is to look to the bronze snake, and they're healed. And so for us today, it's like, all right, when we have moments of doubt, when we have moments of rebellion, one of the most important things we need to do is look to the Lord, look to Jesus. And so we can see these kinds of applications in our lives today, as we continue to follow after Jesus. And so today I'm going to just kind of jump in, but there are a lot of, like I said, a lot of numbers in the first little bit, and I'm not going to read all of the numbers or all of the the things because it's fairly repetitive in the first couple chapters. And so I'm going to kind of hit some of the important things in these chapters. And so chapter 1 starts with the Lord spoke to Moses in the tent of meeting in the desert of Sinai on the first day of the second month of the second year after the Israelites came out of Egypt. So right there, we now know how long have they been at Sinai? A whole year. And so it took them a year to establish the tent, to build the artifacts for the tabernacle. And then after that second Passover, which is the new year that they're counting by, that second Passover is when they um, are going to prepare for the journey out of Sinai, the region of Sinai. And so, as part of preparing out of the region of Sinai, they need to make sure they know who's all going with them. And so that's why, verse 2, take a census of the whole Israelite community by their clans and families, listing every man by name, one by one. You and Aaron are to count according to their divisions all the men in Israel who are 20 years old or more and able to serve in the army. One man from each tribe, each of them, the head of his family, is to help you. These are the names of the men who are to assist you. And so we have these 12 men who are going to help lead the census. Now, the census is about knowing what kind of military force the people of Israel can have. And these are former slaves who now are stepping into a role of warrior. And so they're not the best trained people for this business, but these are the ones that the Lord is calling. And so these 12 people, one elder essentially from each tribe, is going to oversee the census of the whole community. And so in Exodus, we saw the Lord, or we saw Moses and his father-in-law talking, and Jethro gave him instructions on delegating the work. And so he's probably going to work through that same kind of structure to help get the census. And ultimately, these 12 men are going to bring the census totals to Moses and Aaron and report tribe by tribe. And so from Reuben, Eliezer, Simeon, Shelumiel, Judah, Nashon, Issachar has Nathanael, Zebulun, Eliab. From the Joseph tribes, Ephraim has Elishama, Manasseh, Gamaliel. From Benjamin, Abidan, Dan, Ahatzar, Asher, Pagiel. Gad is Eliasaph. Naphtali is Ahira. And so these are the men to count. And these men, their names are interesting because they all are, almost all of their names have some kind of connection to the Lord. The name El being the name of God. And so Shelumiel is God, my salvation. Elisaph is my God that gathers. Nahshon is the diviner. Nathaniel is God the giver. Eliab is my God the father. Elishama is my God the hearer. Gamaliel is God the rewarder. Abidan is my father is a judge. Ahietzer is my brother is help. Pagiel is my fate is God or my prayer God. And Ahira, my brother, is a friend. And so these elder names, like we see a interesting thing that's happening in these elder names is that they are rooted in El, God, name for God, as in Elohim, and they're not yet named after Yahweh, which makes sense if you remember that Yahweh, Adonai, was the name that it was revealed to Moses in the burning bush. And so the people, like these are the first generation of the people who are going to be who were rescued out of Egypt. And so the name of God is representing the name, just El, God. They did not know God's name, Yahweh, just yet. And so later we will see more and more people add Yah into their, like Jeremiah is like that. Those kinds of things will add into their names the root or the connection to the name of God, Yahweh. So they go into the count, right? And so from 20 verses 20 through 46, it's all counting. And so I'm just going to do the tribe and the name, the total, and then we're going to talk about what that total actually comes out to. Reuben, and they're counting just the men who are 20 years old and older who can be in the military. And so this is not a total count of all the people who are in the nation of Israel. So Reuben has 46,500. Simeon has 59,300. Gad has 45,650. Judah has 74,600. Issachar has 54,400. Zebulun has 57,400. Joseph, his two sons, Ephraim has 40,500. Manasseh has 32,200. Benjamin has 35,400. Dan has 62,700. Asher has 41,500. Naphtali has 53,400. So all the Israelites 20 years old or more who are able to serve in Israel's army were counted according to their families. The total number was 603,550. And the estimates for the total number of people who were traveling in this in the caravan of Israel is around 2 million is the traditional estimate. And there are people who have like real questions about these numbers and like, could this many people actually live in the wilderness? And you know, it's hard to fathom that many people living in the wilderness like this. But we also, if we believe as we read through Scripture that God is providing miraculously for these people, He's meeting their needs. There is no reason for us to not believe that the Lord is able to bring the supplies and the things necessary for the people as they are walking in the wilderness together. So, but there are, you might read at some point that people are curious about these numbers, and that's okay. You don't have to worry about people's salvation if like, I don't know if these are super accurate numbers. That's okay. But you also don't have to spend a lot of time trying to prove these numbers, because the goal is just saying like, yeah, these are the people. This is what the Lord has working for Him in the military of the people of Israel at this time. The tribe that was not counted in this is the tribe of Levi. And the Lord talks about this in verse 47. The ancestral tribe of the Levites, however, was not counted along with others. The Lord had said to Moses, "You must not count the tribe of Levi or include them in the census or of the other Israelites. Instead, appoint the Levites to be in charge of the tabernacle of the covenant law over all its furnishings and everything belonging to it. They are to carry the tabernacle all its furnishings. They're to take care of it and encamp around it. Whenever the tabernacle is to move, the Levites are to take it down, and whenever the tabernacle is to be set up, the Levites shall do it. Anyone else who approaches it is to be put to death. The Israelites are to set up their tents by divisions, each of them in their own camp under their standard. The Levites, however, are to set up their tents around the tabernacle of the covenant law so that my wrath will not fall on the Israelite community. The Levites are to be responsible for the care of the tabernacle of the covenant law." So the Israelites did all this just as Moses commanded, just as the Lord commanded Moses. And so all of these tribes, all of this number, these counting, like the Levites are not included because they're never supposed to serve in the military. They're never supposed to fight in wars and battles, but they are intended to defend the tent, the tabernacle. And so they are they're like the Swiss Guard of the Catholic Church. They are just in the Vatican, right? The Swiss Guard. They protect the Pope. In this situation, the Levites, they only serve to protect the tabernacle from not from enemies, but from Israelites who may stray in to the place that is holy ground without the right access into the place. And so the tent is organized. The camp is then going to be organized, and that's what chapter 2 is looking at. And so we start with 2:1. The Lord said to Moses and Aaron, the Israelites are to camp around the tent of meeting some distance from it, each of them under their standard and holding the banners of their families. And so we have the, excuse me. Let me share this with you now. I have a diagram of what it's supposed to look like. Share. All right. And then we can hide that. Okay. So, so the tent of meeting is in the middle here. And then the east, facing the sunrise, we have the camp, the divisions of the camp of Judah. And then we also have Issachar and Zebulun next to Judah. And all the men assigned to the camp of Judah, according to their divisions, number 186,400. And so those are the military force on this side. On the south side, we have the tribe of Reuben as the lead tribe in that section. And then Simeon will be next to them, and Gad will be next to them as well. And the total there is 151,450. And then it stops listing the tribes and their groups and talks about the tent of meeting, and the camp of the Levites will set out in the middle of the camps. They'll set out in the same order as they encamp, each in their own place under the standard. And then it goes to the west side, and this is where we see the tribe of Ephraim as the first lead there, and then Manasseh and Benjamin, and the total there is 108,100. On the north side, we have Asher or Dan as the lead tribe, and then Asher and Naphtali, and the total there is 157,600. And so these are the arrangements of the camp in the tribes. And so each of these is essentially the military defense for the camp. Like, they are going to create a perimeter around the whole camp. And so that's that number that's being counted there. And Judah, Reuben, Ephraim, and Dan are the larger tribes, and so that's why they're in the middle. And then the other two would probably fan out into the distance away from the camp. So again, the total here is 603,550. So the Israelites did everything the Lord commanded Moses, and in this way they encamped under their standards. And that is the way they set out, each of them with their clan and family. But then what are the Levites doing? Because even the Levites have responsibilities in all of this, and that's what chapter 3 is looking at. This is the account of the family of Aaron and Moses at the time the Lord spoke to Moses at Mount Sinai. The names of the sons of Aaron were Nadab, the firstborn, and Abihu, Eleazar, and Ithamar. Those were the names of Aaron's sons, the anointed priests who were ordained to serve as priests. Nadab and Abihu, however, died before the Lord when they made an offering with unauthorized fire before him in the desert of Sinai. They had no sons, so Eleazar and Ithamar served as priests during the lifetime of their father Aaron. And so this is a little recap of history about Nadab and Abihu, and then explaining why Eleazar and Ithamar are the two that are going to take prominence in leading the tribe of the Levites. And so the Lord said to Moses, bring the tribe of Levi and present them to Aaron, the priest, to assist him. They are to perform duties for him and the whole community at the tent of meeting by doing the work of the tabernacle. They are to take care of all the furnishings in the tent of meeting, fulfilling the obligation of the Israelites by doing the work of the tabernacle. Give the Levites to Aaron and his sons. They are the Israelites who are given to wholly to him. Appoint Aaron and his sons to serve as priests. Anyone else who approaches the sanctuary is to be put to death. And so that's the second time the Lord is making this clarification. Anyone who approaches the tabernacle is to be put to death. So the Lord is taking his tent of meeting very seriously. and the people must do likewise. The Lord also said to Moses, I have taken the Levites from among the Israelites in place of the first male offspring for every Israelite woman. The Levites are mine, for all the firstborn are mine. When I struck down all the firstborn in Egypt, I set apart for myself every firstborn in Israel, whether human or animal. They are to be mine. I am the Lord. And so the Levites are the divine possession in place of the firstborn males among the Israelites. The people of Israel were never supposed to practice any kind of human sacrifice. And so like the firstborn of any animal was offered to the Lord, and we read about that in Leviticus, was offered to the Lord as an offering to him. But the firstborn person in any family, like the corresponding offering is the Levite, who does not lay his life down on an altar, but lays his life down in service at the altar. And so the priests are supposed to serve in that capacity. And so chapter 3 here will count all of the Levites males, and we'll get a total of all of the Levite males. It's 22,000. We see that in verse 39. The firstborn listed of all of the firstborn males listed of all the Israelites is 22,273. And so they actually, to get that 273, they put a redemption tax, essentially 5 shekels for each one, according to the sanctuary shekel, which weighs 20 gerahs. So give the money to the redemption of the additional Israelites to Aaron and his sons. And so that's how they account for the difference between firstborns of Israel, firstborns of the Levites. But even here in the Levites, we see a division in the camp and also a division of labor as they serve. And so I'm going to share this thing again, just so you can kind of visualize this. The first one on the east side, which is to meet the sunrise, but also this is the entrance to the tent of meeting. Aaron's family, the priestly family, and so they do all the work at the altar. But then the Gershonites, they are on the west side, and they were responsible for the care of the tabernacle and tent, its coverings, the curtain, and the entrance to the tent of meeting, the curtains of the courtyard, the curtain at the entrance to the courtyard surrounding the tabernacle and the altar, and the ropes, and everything related to their use. And so when they were going to move the tent, the Gershonites' responsibility was all of the outer fabrics around the tent. To Kohath, these tribes, in verse 31, they were responsible for the care of the ark, the table, the lampstand, the altars, and the articles of the sanctuary used in ministering, the curtain, and everything related to their use. And so all of the holy items there, the Kohathite tribes were responsible for those. And then the Merari tribes were appointed to take care of the frames of the tabernacle, its crossbars, posts, bases, all its equipment, and everything related to their use, as well as posts of the surrounding courtyard and their bases, tent, pegs, and ropes. So everything that held the tabernacle in place, all of the structure. The Merari tribe was responsible for those. And so we have the division of the camp of tribes, we have the division of the camp of the Levites, and they everybody had a job and everybody had a responsibility. And it's interesting, I think it's interesting, that these different, the tribes and all the different Levites and everything, like they all had responsibilities in the work of the tabernacle. And so when we think, like fast forward to our time, like one of the things we believe in is the priesthood of all believers, right? And this is from 1 Peter, for you are a holy nation, a royal priesthood, talking about the church. And even in this situation, like all the priests have something to do. And when we look at the modern church, like one of the ways that we are engaging faithfully in the local church is recognizing we all have something to do. We all have a role we can play. And one of the things that we should be looking for is like, well, what is that role? What is the thing that I can do? Because when we serve in the way that the Lord has called us, we are honoring God in particular ways. So I just think it's interesting that this principle is early on with the priests. It carries on all the way into the church as priesthood of all believers. And so as we look at the breakdown of the tabernacle, like all of these instructions are being given before the people of Israel actually move. They have not left Sinai yet. And so the Lord has given them all instructions. And so it says, take a census of the Kohathite branch of the Levites by their clan and families. Count all the men from 30 to 50 years of age who come to serve in the work of the tent of meeting. And so the all of the Kohathites then are given the task of caring for the holy items in the tabernacle. And as they go through, it says in verse 5, when the camp is on the move, Aaron and his sons are to go in and take down the shielding curtain and put it over the Ark of the Covenant law. Then they are to cover the curtain with a durable leather, spread a cloth of solid blue over that, and put the poles in place. And so even before nobody is supposed to go into the most holy place. And so as the first step when they're ready to move the tabernacle is to take the curtain separating the holy place from the rest of the tabernacle, like take it down and walk it over to the ark. Like they're not even looking at the ark, but walk it over to the ark and cover it so that nobody looks upon it. Because if they look at it the wrong way, like it is the power of God, and like they could die. And so they cover it with the durable leather and the cloth or the fabric, the durable leather, and then a cloth of solid blue. And as we walk through all of the different elements here, we're going to see that the table of presence is covered ultimately with the blue cloth. The lampstand is covered with a blue cloth. The gold altar is covered with a blue cloth. And all of these different elements are in the most holy place are covered with blue. Then they are to remove the ashes from the bronze altar and spread a purple cloth over it. Then they are to place it all on the utensils and ministering on the altar, including the fire pan, meat forks, all these different things. After Aaron and his sons have finished covering the holy furnishings and all the holy articles, and when the camp is ready to move, only then are the Kohathites to come and do the carrying. So the Kohathites aren't even doing the packing; they're just the moving crew. But the priests of Aaron's family are the ones that are doing all of the handling all of the holy elements. And sometimes people get really into like the colors in the Bible, and blue does have a pretty common significance throughout the Bible as like the very things of God. And there might be a couple different reasons for that. One, like we think of the heavens, the sky is blue. And so like God comes out from the heavens and appears on Sinai as like this thunder cloud of glory and fire and lightning. All of this stuff's going on. But first, before he appeared, it was blue. And so he's like coming out of that realm. But all of these holy items are then covered with blue to help people remember these are holy to the Lord. Now, one of the things that we don't have in the New Testament is an actual description of Jesus or anything that he ever wore other than at the crucifixion where he had a purple cloth. But often our depictions of Jesus have him wearing a blue sash. And I just think that's interesting. Like here is the very presence of God, and people have made this tradition of depicting Jesus wearing blue, a blue sash in particular. And so he's covered with a blue fabric. Now, it's not something that I would really ever preach on. I just think when we think about like, if you ever wonder like, why is he wearing this? It's probably, I would think, it's probably because the artist is trying to communicate that Jesus is in his very nature God. He is the presence of the Lord. And so so all these different elements are covered in different ways, and then Aaron packs them up, and the Kohathites carry it from place to place. The next tribe is the Gershonites. And so they take a sense of the Gershonite families and clans, count all the men from 30 to 50. And that 30 to 50 that's the range of ages where people would serve serve as priests or Levites and serve in the work of the tent of the meeting. This is the service of the Gershonite clans in carrying their work. They are to carry the curtains of the tabernacle. That is the tent of meeting. It's covering its outer coverings in durable leather, the curtains for the entrance to the tent of meeting, and the curtains of the courtyard surrounding the tabernacle and altar, the curtain of the entrance of the courtyard, the ropes, the equipment. All their service, whether carrying or doing other work, is to be done under the direction of Aaron and his sons. You shall assign them as their responsibility all they are to carry. This is the service of the Gershonite clans, the tent of meeting. Their duties are to be under the directions of Ithamar, son of Aaron, the priest. And so here again, we see you all take all the fabrics and all the coverings, but then you are responsible ultimately to Aaron, but Ithamar is the one that they report to. And then the Merarite clans, they're the ones that are taking all the frames, the crossbars and posts, and they are also then responsible to Ithamar, the priests. And I did not say who. The Kohathites respond to Eleazar, the son of Aaron. I missed that. But the Merarites then are Ithamar. So then they actually do the counting of the clans of the different priests, and counted by clans. It was 2,750 in verse 36. This was the total number of all in the Kohathite clan, was 2,750. The Gershonites were counted by their clans and families, all the men from 30 to 50, and their families were 2,630. And so that's all of the Gershonites who are able to serve in the work of the tabernacle. The Merarites were counted by the clans and families, and they were 3,200. And that's the total of the Merarite clans. So Moses, Aaron, and the leaders of Israel counted all the Levites by their clans and families, all the men from 30 to 50 years of age who came to do the work of serving and carrying the tent of meeting, numbered 8,580. At the Lord's command through Moses, each was assigned his work and told what to carry. Thus they were counted as the Lord commanded Moses. And so this number of people here, Levite made range 30 to 50 is 8,500. And in 30, the total number of males over a month old was 22,000. And so that would tell us that 13,420 males younger than 30 and older than 50. And that's looking at the other numbers. This is actually a reasonable distribution for the amount of people in the Levite clans. And so this group supports the larger number of the count for the other tribes. And so, yeah, so when people get hung up on trying to figure out this distribution and all these different things, it's difficult to nail down specific numbers. One of the challenges is just that all of the numbers end in hundreds and fifties. And so it's never like, 10,453. It's always an even number at 50 or 100. And so that's one of the things for the larger tribes that people kind of get hung up on. But there are some good principles as we're walking through these censuses. The first is that every member of the people of God has his part to play. And the second great principle is that clearly enunciated in this chapter is that Israel was a hierarchy, or more precisely, a theocracy. God spoke to Moses and Aaron, and they passed on God's word to the people. The priests, Aaron's sons, obeyed their father. The Levites were subordinate to the priests, while in turn the Levites served as religious policemen, preventing the ordinary Israelite falling into deadly sin. Similarly, the New Testament then also carries over these principles of structure and order in the community of the church. And so while we don't have a bunch of Levites, we do have people working together to ensure that everybody has a part to play. All right, so that's the first census. Now there's another census later in the book of Numbers, chapter 26, that we'll see that these tribes will vary in size. And we're going to see over this journey through Numbers, there are going to be disciplinary actions from the Lord against the tribes for their disobedience. And so there will be people of Israel who are struck down because of their rebellion. And so the tribes change in size and scope over the next 40 years. But right now, they have this first census. They have a strong count, a strong military force. They really just need to learn how to like train them all how to be in the military. But that's another day's problem. Chapter 5 then starts giving some more laws about purity in the camp, and establishing justice, and then how to test for infidelity if a wife is suspected of infidelity. And it seems like this is out of place. But one of the things that as I was reflecting on it, that like kind of struck me is like the people of God are about to move. And so the Lord is trying to help them remember, like, as you move, more things might kind of get disrupted and out of normal. And so there might be more exposure to anything that might cause disease. And if there is disease, then the people need to be outside of the camp. There might be more exposure to people from other groups. And that could, if that led to infidelity and the husband was jealous or suspicious, what do you do with that? And so those are like, I think why these laws are here is to like say like, all right, you're going to get moving, you're going to get disrupted, and there are things that we need to make right along the way. So verse 5:1, the Lord said to Moses, command the Israelites to send away from the camp anyone who has a defiling skin disease or discharge of any kind, or who is ceremonially unclean because of a dead body. Send away male and female alike. Send them outside the camp so they will not defile their camp where I dwell among them. The Israelites did so. They sent them outside the camp. They did just as the Lord had instructed Moses. And so we spent plenty of time talking about defiling skin diseases, discharges, ditching dead bodies. So we're not going to revisit all of that. But the principle here is like, just set up an establishment outside of the traditional camp, let them be outside. But the goal is not to like send them away forever, but to bring them back in after their period of uncleanness, so that they can be restored into the community. The next part is like about like lawsuits essentially. And so verse 5, the Lord said to Moses, say to the Israelites, any man or woman who wrongs another in any way or is unfaithful to the Lord is guilty and must confess the sin they have committed. They must make full restitution for the wrong they have done, add a fifth of the value to it, and give it all to the person they have wronged. But if that person has no close relative to whom the restitution can be made for the wrong, the restitution belongs to the Lord and must be given to the priests along with the ram, and the atonement is made for the wrongdoer. All the sacred contributions the Israelites bring to a priest will belong to him. Sacred things belong to their owners, but what they give to the priest will belong to the priest. All right, so this is if anybody defrauds or steals from somebody and they are convicted or they feel guilty or they're found out, they can make it right. They restore plus 20% of the value of the thing. And they bring that to the person. They confess it and they make full restitution in that way. But what if the person they wronged is dead and there's no other relatives? That's what verses 8 and following are about, is like, if there's nobody to confess to make a restitution to, then those things go to the priest, who is serving as an intermediary for the Lord, but also as a representative for the person that they have wronged. And so and here, though, it's that they receive the ram as the guilt offering, which is then offered on the altar. And then all of the contributions, secret contributions, those are things that would actually go to the priest. And so if like they stole money and they felt bad and they wanted to make restitution, they bring a ram because the person is dead, and then they give $100, and then plus 20, so $120. But that is given then as a resource for the priests. He keeps that. And so the practical importance of this law is that Israel is to constantly working towards restoration and restitution. In the Gospels, Jesus tells people, like, if you are going to court, make it right before you get to the judge. So even Jesus is like keeping it in this kind of similar trajectory. Like, do whatever you can to keep short accounts, to pay off debts, to restore relationship. Don't keep things out in the open, are out unresolved too long, but to always be working towards resolution, especially because defrauding a person from Israel is a kind of unfaithfulness to the Lord, because they are the represented, they are made in the image of God. The people of Israel are God's chosen ones, and so defrauding somebody in Israel is defrauding the Lord. And so this is an important principle to carry on, to make sure that we are making short work of our outstanding debts or obligations. Then the last one, verse 11. Then the Lord said to Moses, speak to the Israelites and say to them, if a man's wife goes astray and is unfaithful to him, so that another man has sexual relations with her, and this is hidden from her husband, and her impurity is undetected, since there is no witness against her, and she has not been caught in the act. So if a man suspects his wife of infidelity, can't prove it, but he suspects it. Verse 14, and if feelings of jealousy come over her husband, and he suspects his wife, and she is impure, or if he is jealous and suspects her even though she is not impure, then he is to take his wife to the priest. He must also take an offering of 1/10 of ephah of barley flour on her behalf. He must not pour olive oil on it or put incense on it, because it is a grain offering for jealousy, a reminder offering to draw attention to wrongdoing. And so the husband is suspicious of his wife's behavior, so he can take her to the priest along with this offering of barley. And barley is, in other places we see barley is an inferior grain. It is not part of the offering for the weak, and so it is or for the poor, not the weak. And so it is part of a insurance that he is actually sacrificing something to bring an accusation against his wife. And so he brings it to the priest. The priest shall bring her and have her stand before the Lord. Then he shall take some holy water, which is probably from the basin where they draw water out to cleanse things, that water, in a clay jar, and put some dust from the tabernacle floor into the water. So not the most holy place, but in the holy place, maybe scoop out some of some dust and put it in the water. So this is now holy water. After the priest has had the woman stand before the Lord, he shall loosen her hair and place in her hands the reminder offering, the grain offering for jealousy, while he himself holds the bitter water that brings a curse. The loosening her hair is one of the signs of impurity that like a leper would do, or somebody who's mourning. And so it's a sign to say, like, there's something not right here. And so she's holding the grain offering, and the priest brings the water. Then the priest shall put the woman under oath and say to her, if no other man has had sexual relations with you, and you have not gone astray and become impure while married to your husband, may this bitter water that brings a curse not harm you. But if you have gone astray while married to your husband, and you have made yourself impure by having sexual relations with a man other than your husband, here the priest is to put the woman under this curse. May the Lord cause you to become a curse among your people when he makes your womb miscarry and your abdomen swell. May this water that brings a curse enter your body, so that your abdomen swells or your womb miscarries. Then the woman is to say, amen, so be it. So the priest is putting together all the offering and then the bitter water, and he brings it to her, and then he has the woman affirm this curse. And this all seems so kind of it seems strange, right? It seems almost like magical thinking, but it's not intended to be magic or that kind of thing, but it is one of these things called an ordeal, an ordeal, trial by ordeal, where they are putting the person who is a suspect into a place where they have to either tell the truth. The truth is going to be found out. Either the woman tells the truth and nothing happens, or she tells the truth and confesses her sin, or she lies, and the Lord then it's up to the Lord to bring the judgment on the liar. And that's what the priest is doing and saying, like, if you drink this and you are telling the truth, you'll be fine. The Lord will say, no, you're fine. But if you drink this holy water and you are lying, the Lord will strike your womb. And so she is supposed to do this. The priest then is to write these curses on a scroll and then wash them off into the bitter water. He shall make the woman drink the bitter water that brings a curse, and this water that brings a curse and causes bitter suffering will enter her. The priest is to take from her hands the grain offering for jealousy, wave it before the Lord, and bring it to the altar. The priest is then to take a handful of the grain offering as a memorial offering and burn it on the altar. After that, he is to have the woman drink the water. If she has made herself impure and been unfaithful to her husband, this will be the result. When she is made to drink the water that brings a curse and causes bitter suffering, it will enter her abdomen, will swell, and her womb will miscarry, and she will become a curse. If, however, the woman has not made herself impure, but is clean, she will be cleared of guilt and will be able to have children. This then is the law of jealousy: when a woman goes astray and makes herself impure while married to her husband, or when feelings of jealousy come over a man because he suspects his wife. The priest is to have her stand before the Lord and to apply this entire law to her. The husband will be innocent of any wrongdoing, but the woman will bear the consequence of her sin. So it's pretty intense command. One of the things when you read through these laws is the laws they came about because the Lord went to Moses and said, what am I supposed to do with this? And these are the commands that the Lord gave to Moses. And so it really is there's no way for the jealous husband to prove anything. And so it's a giving it over to the Lord and to say, Lord, you know what happened, and we're going to let you decide the fate of this woman. And so while this is an intense passage, and like reading passages like this, and talking like, if you were unfaithful, then you're pregnant, you will miscarry. And if you're unfaithful and you're not pregnant, you'll never be able to have children. Those are intense and like not something that we should like look around today and say like, oh, well, clearly there's a curse on you if any of these things were to happen to somebody. Because Jesus took the curse of sin for us on the cross. But we read stuff like this, and I know it's hard, but the goal throughout the people of Israel is purity in their community. Purity, purity, purity. And unfaithfulness of any kind in the community leads to impurity. So whether you're unfaithful to the laws of the Lord regarding whether or not, like just ceremonially being clean, you're unfaithful to other people in Israel because you defrauded them, or you're unfaithful in your marriage. All of these things are symptomatic of a larger impurity in the camp that needs to be dealt with if the people are going to host the presence of the Lord among them. So that's where we're going to stop tonight. And remember, the people are still not leaving. They're still at Sinai, but they're getting the marching orders to prepare to leave Sinai and head to the land that God had promised to give to their ancestors. So if are there any thoughts or questions? I know we didn't read all of the numbers, but you can do that if you like on your own. So, questions?
I have a question.
Yes, Carrie.
I'm the one with always questions. So when we're getting back to the encampment, when they had everybody around it, was that for purposes from other people attacking? Or was it for within their community to guard guard the temple?
Yeah, the Levites are guarding the tabernacle. Like that's, they're protecting the tabernacle. And then all the other tribes are protecting the whole camp. Like they're all the perimeter, defensive perimeter. And so, yeah, so they're not, like if you think like the other tribes, they're not supposed to touch anything around that tabernacle.
Right.
Like they can come in and make their offerings, but they're not supposed to touch anything. Like they're not supposed to even help like somebody pick up some stuff. Like that's just the priests. And so the priests are like it's I don't like this phrase, but the religious military, the religious defense fund or whatever. Like they're the
Yeah.
religious, yeah, they're guarding the tabernacle. Everybody else is guarding the whole camp. So yeah, did that answer your question?
Yeah. I was just at first I was like, why do they need? I mean, God has all the thing. If he needed that thing, protected completely, he could strike anybody dead. Why does he need them?
Yeah. Well, that is true. God can do that, but he also chooses to work through people. And so yeah, they are
No, I
soldiers of
agree with
God.
Jay's comment.
Yes. They are. They put on all the whole armor of God is all the way back here in the Levites. So, yeah, they are. And we'll see a story where, um, what's his name? Phineas is extra zealous for the Lord. And so he would, some of the Levites are more militant than others. So yeah, but I do think important to note, like the priests in the eastern entrance, those are the sons of Aaron and Moses's
Yeah.
family. Those are the only ones who are actually doing the work of offerings in the tabernacle. The other Levites are doing the work of supporting the tabernacle, but they are not. The Merari, Gershonites, and Kohathite tribes, they are not doing any offering work.
Okay. So like in my military background, that would be security police, guarding the
Yeah,
perimeter.
yeah,
And then
yeah,
the Levites would have been the law enforcement, guarding the
yeah,
town.
yeah. Yeah, that's a
Can't help but notice. You say that they guarded the east. They guarded the eastern entrance. When Adam and Eve left the Garden of Eden, they left through the east gate, and the sun rose on the first day, which was the start of time. And these guys, they guarded the eastern gate, and they also took care of the sacrifices, which is the start of forgiveness or
mhm.
reconciliation. I just that just correlated in my brain just now.
Yeah,
The synapses started firing.
right. Yeah. So the tabernacle is always supposed to be oriented to the entrance is greeting the sun.
Okay.
So every morning the sun is rising, and that is the entrance into the tabernacle. And so yeah. So the on the Day of Atonement, like that east, uh, which interesting little fact, like the Day of Atonement is pretty close to when the autumnal equinox, which is when like the sun is like the most middle of the year. So we've got
Yeah.
the fall equinox and the spring equinox. And so the Day of Atonement is actually pretty close to when it's like really close to the equator. Um, and so like on that Day of Atonement, that one day that the Holy of Holies is opened for the priest Aaron to go in, like that is the day like the sunlight can go from the entrance to the tabernacle all the way into the most holy place. Yeah, but yeah, to greet the sun, welcome the day, and to worship the Lord. Yeah, so these tribes are the east of Eden. All of these things, like there's important metaphors for like a new day starts in the east. But yeah, there's a lot going on with the east, because also God's judgment comes from the east, from the north and the east,
Yeah.
with the Babylonians and Assyrians later. But we're
And the
not there yet.
passage that and the passage that also says as far as the east is from the west. I
Yeah.
mean, everything seems to start from the east, come in the west. It's weird.
Well, even the orientation of maps in ancient Israel, like we orient it in our culture, like north and south. The ancient maps were oriented east to west. So,
Weird.
so like east was on top, like that. So like that, for example, like east is very important in the thinking of the people of Israel. So any other thoughts or questions? There was a lot of stuff in here. There's a lot of numbers, but yeah,
So
I'm excited.
Before this direction about where the different tribes were supposed to camp, were they just camped wherever? I mean, 2 million people is a huge,
Yeah.
almost like a city. So
Yeah.
like the logistics of getting from one side of the city to the temple even is like, that sounds like it would be a full day's walk if you live on the outer edges.
Yeah. It doesn't say anywhere like everybody was just kind of hodgepodge camping wherever they want, like a Dave Matthews Band concert. But I would imagine they were already fairly closely connected to their tribes because they are people, and people tribe up, like we stay with our families. So I think this is just the Lord like codifying it and saying, this is what you do. So yeah, but remember they just built the tent of meeting. Like they would have just finished it like days before this because it took time to build. And so now the Lord is at the very center of the community, and which is God's desire for his people is to like keep him central always. And so now that the tent is all ready and it's established, it's dedicated, it's good to go, like this is how you're supposed to orient your lives around it. So yeah, so it's just putting it into codification.
Can I ask one more question?
Yes, absolutely.
Okay, so when they're doing the census and they're trying to get a grouping of people, men military age, kind of like a draft, they don't really have any military experience so far. They've been wandering in the wilderness. Where would they have even gotten the ideology? Oh, we need a military.
Well, they've seen a military, so
Oh,
they
Egyptian army or something. Oh,
the
well, yeah, the
Egyptians,
Egyptian.
yeah. So they have seen warfare. They have seen, but like, yeah, these people have not been trained in the military in any way, and so, but there could be something happening. We don't get all the details, so they could have had some kind of like training of some sort in the last year while they're at Sinai. Like there could have been some guys who are like, hey, we need to teach some of you guys how to use arrows or slings or spears. Or if they started hunting, like this is one of the things where it's like, this hunting, there's a skill set here that can translate over into defending your home. So yeah, so there could be something, but they will become they'll have plenty of time to learn how to be a military over the next 40 years in the wilderness. So
it's strange. It's like a census for military, but they haven't had to do anything militarily. So where'd they come up with that idea? That's wild.
Yeah. Well, yeah. They're becoming a nation. So a nation has a lot of growing pains early on, but a lot of learning. So even in studying like U.S. history, like the 13, like, you learn about American history in middle school and stuff, and it all feels like this happened, this happened, this happened, this happened. It was easy. Like it wasn't. It was a huge mess for a long time, and it's still a huge mess as these 50 states are trying to figure out how do we like be a country, right? Who's responsible for what? And like this is part of the challenge of nationing, is like learning how to do all these things together. And so like the Bible gives us, like in a lot of places, gives us this big overview of the nation of Israel. It doesn't give us all the information that we would want as like just students of history. Like I would love to have more information on the Kohathite tribe. Like who are these people, and like how did they feel about like, yeah, you guys are going to be carrying all the fabrics, or I can't. No, they're carrying the stuff, the Gershonites are fabrics. Mirari is carrying the posts. Like how do you guys feel about that? Like that's what we do. Or we're like, no, we want the posts. I don't know. So
You wonder if anybody in there actually got annoyed and said, I don't like my job. I want their job.
yeah. Yeah. But one of the interesting things about the ancient world is nobody applied for a job. It's like, you do what your dad did. It's like the idea of applying for a job is a new idea, is a new world. So
imagine what their idea with Indeed.com back in those days.
yeah. It's like, what's your dad's name? You're going to do that. So congratulations. We found you a job. Go hang out with your dad. Yeah. All right. Any other questions, thoughts? Next week, we're going to, oh, what?
I said, I'll zip it. I'll be quiet. Somebody else talk.
Oh, you can ask as many questions as you want, Carrie. You don't have to feel bad for having questions.
Well, like I told you on Sunday, I always forget to write my notes down when you're at the end. As you know, any questions, I'm like, I don't know where I was. This time I wrote notes. I remembered.
Yeah, good. Awesome. Yeah, but next week we will look at chapters 6 through 10. So another 5 chapters. Yeah, so if you want to read ahead and write down some questions ahead of time, that's also great. Jeff, I thank you for that. Prayer for sleep is always good. It's been a crazy busy week so far. So yeah, I'd appreciate any prayer for sleep over the coming days. But all is well. There's nothing traumatic or bad going on, but it's just been busy. So Jay, what are you doing? You're like waving at something.
So I've got this dog over here that keeps like purring at me to play with her. And then she started barking at somebody behind me. So I grabbed her toy to get her attention, and then I tossed it to her.
Oh, okay. All right. I couldn't see any of what was going on other than your arm waving around. So
This is Barkley.
Doggy, Barkley. Wonderful.
Look at that face. Oh,
it's cute.
Fun.
it's so cute.
All right. Well, let's go ahead and wrap it here. Barkley is a good end to the evening. So it's good to see you all. And yeah, so next week, 6 through 10. If I see you on Sunday, awesome. Have a great week regardless. But yeah, be blessed, and let's continue on our journey into the wilderness.
Amen.
Bye, guys.
See you guys later.
Bye, everyone.
Guys.